all, and welcome to Five Strike Final. We're back. We're back in our house. But Joe Patrick, this house is not a home right now.
Wow,
Wow,
dark. We were thinking some dark thoughts already.
It is not good. It is not great, y'all. 1-1 draw here at MBS tonight. 85th minute equalizer for FC Cincinnati and their team of scallywag collection of USL players. They seem to have dredged up off the street and Kendall Waston. And yeah, not great. Not great. A whole lot of interesting things going on. Of course, the discussion has been fascinating. Joe Patrick has somewhat taken up the sword for Frank de Boer here a little bit, and we'll talk about that. We'll try to be as fair and objective about that as possible as we kind of work our way through this Frank de Boer discussion, because obviously we're coming off a game that's contentious for a lot of people right now, and we're coming off some quotes from Frank de Boer just minutes ago, really. That are contentious in a lot of ways. They're going to have people riled up. So we have a lot to kind of get to. We're eventually going to get to your questions as well as we grief counsel a little bit for this.
Can I defend myself on the de Boer thing? Because I want to
say a whole show for you to do it.
I want to say one thing about this, and it's not that I'm defending him in that he needs ample time to prove whether he is or is not the manager of this team. I think it's still too early, way too early, actually. I think you need a lot more time, and I wouldn't say that at this point in the season in every case, but considering the context around Atlanta's season and the fact that Frank de Boer has not been able to train these guys on the training pitch in a tactical system for, I think, 2 consecutive weeks. He hasn't been able to try to tweak anything, make any tactical adjustments, because they've either been playing a match or recovering from a match or in a match preparation day to get ready for the match the following day. They've literally been playing weekend, midweek, weekend, midweek. And so I think it's been that for 2 weeks. And I think we saw a noticeable improvement between the first radio on and the second radio on game when he had a full week
off.
But, we're getting into the nitty gritty. My main point is that he needs to be given an ample amount of time, again, to prove whether he is or maybe he is not the Atlanta United manager for the long term, but we need more time to figure that out.
Are you encouraged by anything you saw tonight?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't. I don't think the performance was good tonight. And I posted something on Twitter earlier saying that I was going to use people's terrible tweets against them later. And who knows? Maybe I had to eat my words there. But I was not talking about how I was expecting the team to perform tonight. I was expecting a win, but I'm not surprised that they played kind of poorly. The team has just been run ragged over the last 2-3 weeks, and they really need to reset. That was the sense I got from talking to the players after the game. That they needed a come to Jesus meeting.
Well, yeah, that's the phrasing. That's exactly the phrasing I used. I was going to say that reset was maybe a little too light. What the sense I got from Brad Gazan, especially after the game, and even from Parkey as well, was that this was going to be more than just, okay, let's take some time to collect our thoughts. This is, we need to sit down and have a talk with each other. I've got the quote from Guzan right here. He says,
"Did your parents, when you were a kid, ever say tell you that you were going to have a talk?" Because I got that. It's like, we're having a talk.
Totally. And sometimes they would do that thing where they would tell you they're going to have a talk,
yes,
and then they wouldn't do it for like a couple of hours,
Yep.
so they're just sitting there worried
Yep.
about the talk. Let's see. But he says, there's a lot of games we played. It's our second game of the season. We can't let this be our defining moment. It's a chance to have real conversations among ourselves as professionals, as competitors, as athletes. Those conversations will entail some honest truths. At the moment, we aren't good enough. Now, Brad wouldn't get into specifics of what that is, obviously, but it did seem very focused on sitting down, and like we said, it's come to Jesus time already, way earlier in the season than we kind of expected. And Joe, I do want to say, before we kind of get any further with this, my nuanced gray area take, as someone on the chat says, Sark out. Stop telling me to fire Sark. Good bit. But my nuanced gray area take for all this is, I think that both sides have a bit of a claim to being right here. I do think that you're right in the sense that Frank DeBoer needs more time, but I completely get where everyone's frustrations are coming from a tactical standpoint, from the standpoint of the way DeBoer kind of portrays himself sometimes. And we'll get into these quotes, and I know I keep teasing them, but these quotes are really interesting coming from Frank. But also from an aesthetic standpoint over the last few games. Even tonight when we were on the front foot a lot, we had over 70% possession. There was no teeth to it.
Didn't seem meaningful. Yeah.
And for casual fans who may have been drawn in by an attacking style, it's kind of concerning to wonder what they're thinking about it a little bit as well. It's very off-brand, and I think that may be one of the biggest things for this front office when considering Frank DeBoer.
It's something that you and I and Doug Roberson chatted about just briefly a second ago, which is that when Frank DeBoer came into the team, he said that it only needed a minor or just a minor upgrade or like a software upgrade, just like some minor tweaks here and there. But really, what we're seeing is a completely different philosophy and a completely different system.
It's an overhaul.
Honestly. So, and Frank talked after the game tonight saying that, I said, would you ever consider pulling out of the 3-4-3 and going to another formation since, the team really has not created very many chances in the last few games? And he said that, he put the team in a 3-4-3 because it was what they were accustomed to playing under Tata Martino towards the end of last season. And that kind of leads me to think that this team is also, I think this is something that's gone way overlooked and under talked about, is how much this team misses Miguel Almiron. His energy running, connecting midfield to Joseph. He is a game-changing player. We're seeing that at the Premier League level now. And I think this team is struggling to figure out how to play without someone, not just of like his pure quality, but his very unique skill set that he had. And Pity Martinez, obviously, very talented player. I have no questions about his talent, but he's definitely not the same type of player that Miguel Almiron was. And I think the team is really struggling to fill that void.
He's not the same type of player, but is he being implemented right now in a way that makes this team the best and that makes him perform the best? And I don't think the answer is yes right now. And that comes back to the way DeBoer has kind of set this up. Miguel's a huge loss, obviously, and I completely understand that. But it is concerning if we continue to go forward, I think, and see that he's maybe not being deployed in the best way possible. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair, and I think that a lot of people have had their issues with the tactics that Frank DeBoer has deployed, and I asked him after the game, like I said, that will you consider changing it after this game to try to go to something else, just to try to spark some life into the team and get them creating some chances? And I think, and it kind of all plays back in what I was talking about when we started this H-chat here, which was that if he's going to change something, he needs more time. He can't change to a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 on a Sunday when you had a Wednesday game. You've got a Wednesday game coming up. It's not really practical. I mean, you can do it in FIFA, but it's a lot harder in real world.
I do want to say there's another side to that, though, and I think we can talk a little bit about the rotations that he's made, or their lack thereof, really. I
think his
explanation was weird.
He's contradicted himself with what he says and what he does.
right. And so we'll go and get into these quotes I've been talking about the entire time. I thought this was a super interesting, and it made sense, the explanation for why he did rotate tonight, but at the same time, you're kind of side-eyeing it a little bit. So he says, this is the first home game. You want to be as strong as possible. There's almost 73,000 people in the stadium, and we had a loss, of course, in the first game against DC. So you want a good result. You think maybe you might do some rotation, but for me, the most important thing was getting a boost to the next game. Sometimes you have to risk those things. A home game, everyone wants to see Gonzalo. That's normal. That's why we put him in.
Weird. It's kind of weird that you would admit that you kind of did it to appease the fans.
Right. But comes back to the whole thing. The PR outlook of all of this is so interesting to me because you have a guy coming in whose history is one that is negative for the most part. If you take recency bias and you look at the most recent examples we have at Inter Crystal Palace, then you have a perception of a guy who is maybe a bit bumbling in what he's been doing, who has been struggling right from the get-go. We're seeing that here. So obviously the PR aspect is going to be on his mind, but then you hear some of the quotes, and if the PR aspect is on his mind for those, then that's concerning because he doesn't understand it.
And to me, it's even beyond that, and comes down to trying the tactics and trying to win the game. I mean, he talked after the game about the team needing runners in the second half, players running beyond the line. And meanwhile, he's got Tito Villalba that doesn't come off the bench in this game.
Yes.
Who literally, that's like the thing he does. Yes, like that is
Sure.
that is his thing.
And to clarify that a little bit too, his main point I think he was trying to get at was that Tito in tighter spaces is going to be less technical, and so that was his reason for not doing that. But back to your point is that if you put someone in like Tito who's going to be making those runs, those spaces are going to be stretched.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
He's going to help the players around him just by his presence, being there. So, and that's the kind of thing I've started to notice Frank, kind of contradicting himself in this fashion from time to time, and English isn't his first language. I'm not making an excuse there. But I'm just saying maybe he's just trying to have verbal diarrhea throughout, just get the press conference over with, and hope that no one is kind of understanding what he's saying. Sometimes I feel like it's a tactic.
Absolutely, it is absolutely a filibuster tactic. I've seen it from coaches at all sorts of levels. I had to laugh at a very high NFL coach one time. I was in a press conference for did the same thing. I notice it now more and more that coaches have started to do this really kind of filibuster and keep talking.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's going to get you in trouble.
Especially when they sometimes they understand they've made a mistake in their answer, and so then that answer is just going to keep going.
It keeps going until it just spirals out of control.
Yeah.
Interestingly, we also talking about the tactical changes and not bringing in Tito and everything like that. He went on to say, and this is good because talking about the verbal diarrhea here, he went on to say that he thought those runs in behind created a lot more chances in the second half. And flat out, we're going to fact check that right here. They absolutely did not. None of the stats hinted that at all. Much more key chances in the first half for Atlanta United, more shots on target. The second half was not better from a chance perspective, even though it was perhaps a little more lively towards the end with Andrew Carlton coming in and maybe coming close to making some things happen. But
he provided a spark, but I thought, I think I tweeted something out about the 70th minute. It looked like the entire team was dead.
Yeah.
They at one point
you nudged me and said Remedi's dead. And after that, Remedi got
when I said that was Remedi had just chased down Greg Garza, and he was literally, when Garza finally passed and Remedi stopped chasing him, Remedi grabbed Garza and was patting him on the back, trying to be friendly, but he was honestly, it looked like he needed support, just stay on his feet at that moment after making that sprint. It was, and then I think Remedi come off.
It's the first home game. You got to
off.
play everybody, right?
Yeah.
Oh no. So yeah, there's just a whole lot of interesting things. Do we want to go ahead and get into the kind of the main quote of the night, the one that's kind of popping off?
We need to address this
a little bit.
Yeah.
We're gonna go ahead, and I know it's not incredible podcast / video fodder to just kind of sit here and listen to me read a quote.
It's important that you get this one right. Because it was a bit incendiary. And it's funny I was nodding in agreement when he said this, but
yes,
you got the quote?
It's Joe Patrick. Again, just taking up that sword makes me laugh because we love you, Joe, and we're proud of you.
Thanks.
But yeah, the question, we do want to get the question to kind of lead into it right. It was essentially from a personal standpoint, kind of how has the start affected you? Am I saying that right? Am I putting that in the right frame?
I think so, yeah. It's something about, is it causing you personal strain, getting off to such a rough start?
Sure.
Kind of thing.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're gonna roll through this full quote here. It says, "The fans last year were a little bit spoiled with results last season." He did say spoiled. That is the direct quote. Everybody expected, and that's also normal. But everybody also saw what happened with Toronto when they played Champions League last season. Out of nothing, we were reduced to play every 3 days a game. Now, I think in 17 days, we play 5 games. That's a lot. And we also play Monterrey, who's just a very good team. Not a team you think, okay, you're going to beat them away. We were very close to a very good result, 1-0, but we have 2 setbacks in the last 9 minutes against Monterrey, and now in the last 5 minutes against Cincinnati. That's hard because everyone gave 100% to get a good result. And I think we can go line by line here.
Yeah, I was going to say, we need to break this down. So let's address the spoiled thing first.
Sure. Talking about if you're making PR moves to put in Pity Gonzalez in front of 60,000 people,
Pity Martinez. Pity Gonzalez?
Pity Gonzalo Martinez. He calls him Gonzalo.
Yeah, he does.
Sorry. So Pity Martinez, goodness. If you're putting Pity Martinez in front of 70,000 people for PR purposes, then you got to be more aware of how words like spoiled are going to come across. I think. But in a sense, in the way he said this, in the context of how he said it,
See, and this
with
is
the results last season, yeah, sure, why not? It's expected that this fan base would have high standards after a championship.
That's true. I do think this is the part that I was nodding my head at. I do think Atlanta United fans are spoiled. And that's not to say that, I think Atlanta United fans shouldn't have high expectations. I think they legitimately have been spoiled in being able to watch amazing soccer for 2 years, for the only 2 years that this club has existed. So, in that sense, I totally agree with Frank de Boer. I think that, and the frustration we're seeing from the fans, we heard some boos tonight, is how we transition to a new era. Chapter 3, if we want to be on brand and be company men with ATL UTD. Yeah. It's never easy. It's never easy to change coaches, because when you're not just changing a coach, you're changing an entire coaching staff. You're changing the philosophy of the way that the team plays, and obviously this team again is losing a player that was super important to them last year. So anyway, back to the spoil thing. I agree. Come at me.
Yeah, sure. I don't.
Are you not? Do you guys not feel like you've been blessed to see this team?
Absolutely. So I agree with that to an extent, but I also think that the expectations of a team coming out and showing just how much talent they have and having an understanding of what they're doing, I think that is a fair expectation. Now, it may be overblown to an extent because of the spoiled thing, but at the same time, you haven't seen anything that matches the expectation that a team who is almost certainly the most talented in MLS, I would say,
Sure,
has not been showing anywhere near that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're showing it on the level of literally on the level of an expansion team with a bunch of USL players.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The play's been bad. It's been worse than I thought it would be.
Right.
But again, I'm kind of waiting to withhold my judgment. And I should say about the spoiled thing, while I agree, never would have said it.
Yeah.
Never would have said it in my life. If I was Madrid,
I'll
say it's all I am.
Maybe he's just way more blunt than we're used to.
Yeah.
No niceties, which may not go over well here in the heart of the South. We'll see. We'll see. I do want to get to the next thing though, where he talks about everybody also saw what happened with Toronto last year, and that's concerning to me from a perspective. You kind of get into a little bit of whataboutism there, where you kind of say, well, hey, look, we're struggling. But hey, so did these guys last year, which ignores a whole lot of context, which ignores a whole lot of other teams who made it far in the Champions League last year.
Rebels went,
for example,
one leg
right?
less and had to set that points record. So
absolutely. So it's concerning that if you see him kind of making those kind of projections. Again,
I thought that
I
was
don't know
not
how much we can take out of it.
I thought
that's maybe the worst part of the whole thing.
Yeah, I thought that was worse than saying.
Actually, I don't know if it's the worst part of the whole thing. We're getting there.
Okay,
it's bad.
Yeah.
So of course he talks about just how much they're playing, and that's fair. That's fair. If you're gonna be playing a lot of games, he went on to kind of clarify that further with stuff Joe already touched on, with just how they aren't being able to work what they need to into practice. But he goes on to say, and we also played Monterrey, who was just a very good team. Not a team you think, okay, you're going to beat them away. Let's just sit with that. Let's just sit with that one for a second.
I mean, listen, Monterrey is more financially powerful than Atlanta United is on the field. I mean, they needed a left back. They went out and bought one for £4 million, and Miguel Ayun, he's a Mexican legend. They are legitimately a great team. Now, again, I wouldn't say that. Again, this is exactly what we just talked about. It's deflection, and I thought that this was actually the most kind of cringeworthy part of his press conference, and it kind of seeps into a lot of his answers. I felt just this, excuses, I guess you could say, is a word for it. It's not that direct. It's more of I don't know. It's like an epidemic that's infiltrated. Everything he talks about is cushioned with these little deflections and whataboutism, like you said.
Absolutely. It's interesting to openly admit that your mindset is that you don't think you can win. In a sense, which may not be how he meant it, but it's how it's going to be perceived.
Yeah,
again, for a guy who's PR aspect, whose outlook, his aesthetic is so important for what he needs to do here to be accepted. It's just not good. It's just not good. So yeah, yeah. Let's see what else did he have in here. That's pretty much the gist of it. He also says stop booing everybody because the players played hard. Okay. Sure, bud.
It is amazing. Like, we played bad here under Tata. Believe it or not, we actually did. We played a time. We lost to Minnesota United on this field. We actually beat Philadelphia Union, but we played terribly. They had 2 men sent off in like the 20th minute, and I think we ended up winning 3-1 or something. But it was
when all the VAR innings happened,
yeah.
And we got all depressed about losing to Sporting and
yep.
Red Bulls, who were phenomenal teams.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we played poorly here many times, but I've never seen the booing, or obviously heard the booing.
Right.
The general reaction from the fans is interesting to me.
And someone makes a good point here too, and it's something we didn't quite touch on, which we should have, is that Frank did kind of say, "Well, stop booing the players." They weren't booing the players, though. I don't think they were. I'm sorry. So yeah, no, yikes. But you're right. There was times where Tata, was struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for Frank, it's coming right at the beginning.
Yeah, and I think that this is kind of plays into what he like kind of meant to say, which is that if it weren't for this very high bar that's been set in front of him, people might not be reacting this way. People might not be so freaked out. We'd probably be ecstatic that we had Frank DeBoer as our head coach, if he was the first one.
If this is GBS, same exact results. Maybe same even aesthetic even. If this is Barra Stiletto or Stiletto, how do you think people are reacting? Is it the exact same? I can't imagine it is.
I don't know.
I think it's bad, but it's
Good
not
question.
this.
Good question.
They're not getting booed tonight.
Yeah, and speaking of him, I mean, LA Galaxy they lost pretty poorly against FC Dallas.
There may have been no good answer to what this actually was, but
yeah.
I do think it's interesting to talk about just the fans' perceptions of it, though, and the booing, and people already now, I think, legitimately calling for Frank DeBoer's head. A small section.
I still think it's ridiculous.
Which is silly. We're going to call you silly right here. Silly. But at the same time, there is kind of a wonder, like, what is the breaking point? And I don't want to try to pinpoint that because that's impossible. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how the team is going to react to this. But I do want to say that if you hire a guy like Frank DeBoer, like Darren Eales and Carlos Bocanegra both did, knowing exactly what they were doing, I'm sure, having well researched it, having examined all the candidates, all that kind of thing, you understand that there is going to be potentially some PR hassle with this if they get out to a slow start. So I don't think any of y'all calling for it, no one's going to really jump the gun and he's not going to be gone tomorrow. This isn't that kind of club. This isn't that kind of front office. And I think that's important to note for a lot of people who may be chomping at the bit.
And for as much money as they've been willing to spend, I'm assuming that a firing would be a pretty significant payday or buyout for Frank DeBoer's contract. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I just assumed that to be the case.
But you wonder, but again, back to the breaking point, you do wonder a bit, like when does the brand start getting damaged? And that's where it gets a little iffy if maybe Joseph Martinez doesn't like the way things are going. Who do you kind of deal with first? Do you deal with angry Joseph Martinez, or do you deal with Frank DeBoer? Which again, long ways down the road, but there are a lot of interesting hypotheticals coming out of this.
Well, it's something that we've talked about before. I don't know if we've ever talked about on this show. So there was a game last year where Atlanta United, they were winning like 1-0 at halftime, and it was kind of a boring game. It was kind of like the first half of this one. You get a goal, but it's mainly pretty well done. And they ended up winning like 3-0 or 3-1 or something. And I remember after the game, somebody asked Joseph what the message was for them at halftime, and he said that Tata gave him the business. That was the quote at halftime of the game. They were winning 1-0, and I think that spoke a lot about how much kind of social capital Tata Martino had within that group of players, within that locker room. And I'm not sure that Frank DeBoer's there yet. I don't know if he can, after a first half like they had tonight, if he can go in there and give them the business and say, we might be winning, but this is not up to standard.
You know where this is heading? This is heading towards a players-only meeting.
Yeah, that was the vibe I got tonight.
Yeah.
That was definitely the vibe I got tonight.
Which we haven't heard of in MLS since the famous LA Galaxy closed-door meeting that did absolutely nothing. We're heading there. We're heading there. That's interesting.
Again, I think that I think a lot of things need to happen before we even get into this territory. Again, I hate to keep harping on it because it sounds like an excuse, but this team needs time on the training pitch. I think that that's like what everybody can clearly see is that there are tactical flaws in the system, and they're only going to be improved by them getting drilled, by the manager. He hasn't really had that time to show what he can do yet. If he's not improving the team when they are having that, that's when, we've talked about me saying everybody's crazy for saying you should be fired or whatever. That's when I'll eat my words. If we're mid-season-ish and we're still not seeing improvement, we're still seeing kind of the same thing. We did our Dirty South Soccer predictions. I predicted us to finish 4th. I kind of expected this to happen. It's not easy. CONCACAF Champions League is not an easy tournament. Knew there was not going to be time to train, and there was going to be a big difference in this team versus the team that Tata Martino had. So, it's something we really need to keep attention to toward as the season goes on.
Yeah. Gosh.
You look like you have something you want to say.
No, let's get the questions. Let's get the questions.
Do we actually have questions, or is it?
Why is the first one from
why?
Robin? Let's see.
I think she was just mad that you. I think Robin was probably just mad that you were requesting
questions
engagement after a poor result.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Robin was just probably asking why in general. Gregor Smith asked, "Are we sure?"
I think we've already answered that question, by the way, in a previous HDAD. So if you want to know why, you'll have to go back and listen to one of the old episodes.
It was something about finding love in humanity or something like that. I'll articulate it better next time. Gregor Smith asked, "Are we sure Breck Shea can even cross a road without killing himself?" Interestingly, so the wing backs are getting a lot of crap. I didn't think they were terrible tonight.
I thought Shea was not good.
Okay.
I thought
which is fair. I don't think it was great.
So the problem I have with the wingbacks actually is that they're failing to see like the entry passes into whatever playmakers on that side, like Barco or Pitti. Mm-hmm. Sometimes those players would be dropping off the back line into space between the midfield line and the defensive line of Cincinnati, and the wingbacks were just not putting that ball in. And when you put that ball in, that's when the confusion starts to be created in the defense. Without that happening, Cincinnati just sat in their shell almost all night. They just sat in a 4-4-2 shell and let Atlanta United pass in a big U around it. Yeah. And they were never really threatened a whole lot.
Right. And that's scary. It's so boring. God, it was boring. Like, it was just kind of... And I don't know... And this is something I asked you in the middle of the game, was you kept preaching time and everything like that, and I'm on your side. I believe that. But at the same time, I don't know how it's supposed to look at like full functioning capacity, and if that is ever going to get to a point where it's interesting soccer to watch.
Right. And I don't have an answer for that, to be honest. Sure. Like I wish I had a better, more extensive knowledge of Frank de Boer's past. I mean, I've watched Ajax highlights. They look amazing from Frank de Boer era. But I haven't actually watched full games, and I would be interested to know if they kind of ever suffered through this kind of thing as well. But, you think about those teams that he managed. Frank de Boer, when he took over Ajax, he was managing a team with Jan Vertonghen, Toby Alderweireld, Christian Eriksen, Luis Suarez. A hugely talented team. Like a team that had way more... a decent team in the Eredivisie. So I think you do have to question, was his success there because he had this overabundance of talent?
Sure, but you got to think about the overabundance of talent relative to what else is going on in Eredivisie. And I feel like the gap between us and most teams is big.
Definitely tonight, yeah.
Is it on that level? I think it might be.
I think against some teams in MLS it is. I think against some other teams it's very even. Okay. But against a team like tonight, Atlanta should be winning this game 3-0, 4-0.
Sure.
4-1, something like that. And we never created the chances to score that many goals.
Yeah.
The chances created is an issue.
Let's see here. Lots of where is Tito questions. We kind of touched on what possession is trying to do. Look, it's just a whole lot of not good. Yeah, we kind of touched on a lot.
Someone said, luckily we have Philly coming in over the next weekend, so maybe we can get another draw there. That's a good opportunity for a point. It is helpful that this team finally has a few home games. They'll don't have to travel at all this week. They obviously get the home leg against Monterey and then another home game against Philadelphia.
But let's talk about
Wednesday. I won't be
Wednesday.
here for, by the way.
Is anyone gonna play Wednesday?
I don't know. It'll be really interesting. No one really talked about Wednesday. Wednesdays, I mean, it's kind of done. I don't really care, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I care. I'll watch the game, but I don't care who starts. Really, I'm not expecting the result.
I'm not driving from Athens for it. I don't think.
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't either. I do think there is downside, though. I don't think there's much upside because I don't think it's possible for there to be upside, considering it's already 3-0. But I think if it's a 5-0 loss or a 5-1 loss or something, that will be something.
Yeah,
and it won't
that
not
could
be
be
something
special.
good. Yeah,
that could be special. We could see.
And I think that
it could look like this by the end of the game.
I think. I think there's a risk if he if he does not rotate, there's a risk if he does rotate and he loses by that big margin. So I do wonder if he's going to stick with the same starters again, who were clearly dead. They only had 60 minutes in their legs today.
Yeah. Again, go back to a public relations perspective. There's no winning for FTP Wednesday. You don't play anybody, then you stop trying and you gave up. You do play everybody, well, why didn't you rotate? Why is everyone so tired for Sunday?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a hole he dug, I feel like. But
yeah,
I don't know, it's rough.
What was your impression of the players, of just talking to them? It actually it gave me a little bit of comfort hearing their words. I don't know if I should say, when we got into the locker room, nobody in there except for the people that they had already the communication staff had already talked to who needed to stay and answer questions. Although I think Gressel stayed and he didn't have to.
Gressel has to launch a new.
But it was like a ghost town in there, and it was so funny. Doug Roberson from the AJC was like, "Are any of the other players here? Did they all leave? Did they all leave?" And no one was no one on the communication staff. They were like, I'll see. I'll find out." And Gressel just sitting on the other side of the locker room, they left.
That is problematic, by the way. We need to get something sorted out with that. There's got to be a way for people to do their jobs and hold players somewhat accountable in this too. But that's a different discussion for a different day. My impression, I was not heartened by any of it. I mean, you can have Guzan getting up there and saying, that when it comes down to it, 11 versus 11, you have to be the better 11, all that kind of thing. But I understand the hesitancy to point out the exact issues with it. You don't want to really call anybody out, but I'm not sure anyone is aware of what the exact issues are right now. I didn't really get the sense that, of course, this is post game too. No one's gonna be coming out and being like, "Yeah, we're going out tonight, and we were running suicides out here on the field, and we're gonna get this done right now." No one's gonna be like that. Everyone's gonna be a little bummed.
Yeah.
But you don't have a whole lot of time to think about it, honestly, with the game coming up next week. Gosh, man, it may be a long while before this gets sorted out. When do you have time to have the come to Jesus meetings?
Right. Yeah.
Where do you pick out what to do with it? So not that anyone was bad with the media or anything tonight. Everyone was pretty open.
I thought
good.
Again, I liked what they had to say. I thought it was fiery, passionate.
Yeah.
They cared.
Yeah.
Obviously, I still think this team's playing for Frank DeBoer. I think that's another thing we look at. You mentioned Joseph. What if he has a problem? I think that's always something you look for in a manager. Do the players look like they're trying for him?
And when that stops happening, then
that's
then
alarm bells going off.
Yeah.
And I don't see that. I still think this team wants to do well. They're trying to do well, but they don't quite have a rhythm with each other.
They don't understand what they need to do well yet. I don't think. Or what to fix to do well.
I think that's right.
I think that's where it's kind of at right now. And like I said, it may be a second before that gets fixed.
Yeah.
Isn't that fun?
Frank DeBoer, I think he's a poor communicator. That's kind of my takeaway so far.
And we talked about that before we
Yeah.
really began interacting with them, and that
Yeah.
was just kind of our impression of the dude. And you know, I can make Dutch Lane Kiffin jokes all I want, and all that kind of thing. But until you kind of like really interact with them, we weren't really sure. And it may be a little bit of confirmation bias on our end, but at the same time, seeing everyone else's reactions to it, maybe didn't have that first impression. Kind of makes me feel like I'm kind of right about that kind of thing. So how do you go from Tata, who in any language is a wonderful, warm
DeBoer did not lose the locker room tonight. Just saying.
Right. No, I think we had someone comment that.
Someone said that. It's not true.
Right. We've had whole lots of interesting comments on if you're paying attention to this. But yeah, no, coming from Tata into a guy that's a little more awkward. Maybe like when he's speaking his like native tongue, he's like, it just makes sense on different levels.
Yeah.
Maybe we're just being judgy because he doesn't speak on the same level as we're used to. But at the same time, like, Tata didn't speak English at all.
Right.
And we still loved him.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why we loved him. I don't know.
Parker's even said, I think someone was talking about, you know, understanding DeBoer or whatever, and Parker said the same thing. He goes, Tata spoke Spanish, and I didn't understand 90% of what he said, but, you know, he still seemed to get his point across that when he needed to.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And I will say, you know, Tata's system, when he started in 2017, it wasn't perfect. We only won 3 of his first 10 games. But I will say that we looked like we knew what was going on a little bit more tactically than this team seems to right now. And there was in those first 10 games, I think we only played 3 of them at home. Right? We only won 1 of those home games.
Sure.
But I don't know. I do have a worse feeling about this than I did back then.
And that's
but maybe hindsight's 2020.
Sure. Yeah. Totally. I don't know. The hunch for me was always kind of there. That you saw my reaction to it when this was announced. Just kind of the neuroticism with which I went for it and trying to.
I opened up our back-end system on Dirty South Soccer, and I saw an article that you had started that had nothing but a headline and the picture in it, and the headline was like, I'm falling deep down into the dark hole of Frank DeBoer and I don't know what I'm going to find out, or something like that.
Right, yeah, something to that extent. But yeah, no, I maybe had more of a negative reaction than other people would, and some of it was partly joking and like wanted to kind of continue on with it, but there was that kind of hunch. And so now that it's kind of being capitalized upon, like, I don't know, again, confirmation bias is a hell of a drug. That's all I'll say for a lot of us. Thoughts? Anything else?
I don't have any other thoughts. Maybe I had some and I've forgot them while we've talked. Anybody have any last second questions? Which is great. HDAD fodder, podcast fodder. Y'all are weird. You talk about some weird stuff.
You do.
Miss Miggy? Oh,
no,
I was thinking like Miss Piggy. I thought it was like Miss yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I apologize.
All right, this is terrible podcast stuff.
We need to
get out of here. We're gonna go home. You guys sleep well. We'll see you guys later this week. We'll have another HDAD. Will we have a midweek HDAD?
I don't know if I will, because I'm gonna be out of town. I'm leaving town for the next weekend.
Okay.
Don't know if I'll be able to get one done. We also have a midweek game. There's just a lot going on this week, so
sure.
I would say no special HDAD this week, unless you do one. But
maybe we'll see. Probably not.
Probably not.
But maybe. Spring break. Woo!
Happy spring break.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm gonna spend it by doing work.
So
we'll let you know on the Twitter, all that kind of thing. Follow us at 5-Stripe-Final, and go ahead and follow at Dirty South Sock as well if you're not already. Check everything out on Dirty South Soccer throughout the week. Going to be a whole lot of interesting content.
If you are watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel and click the bell icon so that you get notified when we do this show. We do it for most home games. I won't be here next week.
We will have a replacement. Yeah. So we'll have Harris Kriskich from Dirty South Soccer as well to kind of talk, and we'll have the live show in some capacity somewhere. So yeah, but yeah, everything else.
Richard, you're welcome. Thank you.
Keep sending us questions about the week. We'll try to answer them as we can.
Yeah, feel free. Always send a question to 5-Stripe-Final at 5-Stripe-Final on Twitter.
Cool. At 5-Stripe-Final on Twitter. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. At 5-Stripe-Final on Twitter. All right, that'll do it for MBS. 1-1, your final score. Bye, y'all.
Bye.